everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today for the Brand Innovators TrendWatch Summit. As we all know, COVID-19 was was a big impact on the restaurant industry this year. And over this past year, we've seen them adapt, evolve, and innovate through that. And someone who very much enjoys going to restaurants, I'm excited to see what's next on the horizon for them all. So I hope you all can join me in that. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Bruno Cardinali, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of Popeyes Louisiana Kitchen. Bruno, I'm super excited to be speaking with you today. Before we dive in, I just want to introduce myself again. I'm Jim Gregory. I'm the National Sales Lead here at Samsung Ads for QSR. So just give you a quick background about Samsung Ads, everybody. We're an advertising ecosystem spanning hundreds of millions of devices across smart TV, mobile, and desktop. Exclusively powered by our brand safe inventory via Samsung Data and Insights, we provide advertisers with the opportunity to engage our consumers at the Samsung household across all those devices and give them opportunity for reach, scale, and precision in every connected moment. Bruno, we've had the chance to speak prior to this, but I'm really excited to jump in here today and get started with these thoughts that you may have. Are you ready to kick it off?
Yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. And thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
As you guys would say, y'all good? So let's get started with that.
More than ever.
So we saw this summer that Popeyes ignited the chicken wars, among other restaurants. What new and innovative advertising and marketing opportunities did this strategy present for you guys?
Yeah, look, I think it's been a great journey for us to be honest. In the past 18 months or almost 2 years now. The strategy since day one. So I joined the brand Popeyes in March of 2019, actually. So it's been 2 years this month. So the strategy since the day one was to really try to get Popeyes to be more accessible and more relevant to everyone in America, right? So we knew Popeyes had a pretty solid and loyal set of guests, but not the rest of the country was actually enjoying Popeyes and visiting Popeyes. So we basically developed a whole strategy with the team here on how to go and reach more people, right? So one of the main things that we realized is that we were a chicken place without a chicken sandwich. So it's a pretty basic menu gap that we had back in 2019. So we worked with the culinary team and our operations team to make sure that we could bring that to everyone. Right. And as we started to roll out the sandwich, we started to hear and track a lot of hype, a lot of chatter in social media about the sandwich, basically just praising and celebrating how good the sandwich was, or the sandwich is, and people comparing and doing a lot of that conversation that happens naturally on social media. So when we were designing the national launch, we basically just got together with our creative agencies and briefed them with a one single line, which was believe the hype. We wanted to make sure that everyone who had tried the sandwich and were hyped about it, that we could bring that sentiment, that experience to everyone who hadn't at that time tried the sandwich, and basically incentivize and tell them how good the sandwich was for them to try it. That whole strategy sparked a bunch of conversation, a bunch of debate, of course. I think a lot of news outlets ranked the launch as the most successful launch in QSR history. So a lot of things played into the role of launching chicken sandwich and how we do business currently, right? But I think it's been a great journey. So it's exciting to be here.
That's great. I think for consumers, we win the wars the most because we get to taste test everything. So the more chicken sandwiches, the better. So that's great. That's great to hear that, though. But in that type of engagement and looking outside of that, you had the hype on social media and so on and so forth. How do you continue to stay engaged outside of that, especially during this time, right, where people were staying at home? So what was the most important for you, especially over your 2 years? 1 year was completely different than the other. So how do you kind of balance that and take a look at that?
Yeah, look, I mean, especially in the past year, right? So a lot has changed, of course, right? So in the past year, not only in terms of staying at home orders, but I think, in terms of values and priorities, people really, everyone, I guess, started to prioritize other things or going back to basic sentiments and experiences. And, a lot of those things really popped up in how we talk to our guests, in how we talk to them, physically, but in the last year more so through social media. So what we continue to do is stay very close to our guests. Like it's really staying close to what they're saying, staying close to pop culture, kind of like right now. What's happening right now in pop culture, not what happened 2 hours ago or 3 hours ago, but really what's happening now, what's popping up right now. And we basically, with the launch of Chicken Sandwich, and basically open up a whole avenue that we call internally as live advertising, which is basically doing advertising live. It's really understanding what's happening in society currently, like today, right now, making sure that we, of course, we spend a lot of time actually with our teams in refining and evolving our brand tone of voice, our approach, our personality, so that when we see those things popping up in pop culture, we can, evaluate if that's a place for us to be, if it makes sense from a brand space territory, if it does so, how does should we actually interact in that conversation, right? So that's how we basically keep connected with our consumers. And the fun and excitement really comes from the brand, right? So that's who we are as a brand. That's where we're from. Louisiana, New Orleans is a place that really lives and breathes inner joy. The simple joy of being alive. So I think we want to, in everything that we do, we want to make sure that we communicate and we show that sentiment to everyone.
Definitely keeping that spirit. I don't know if I can come up with an acronym for live advertising, but I think at some point somebody will. So that's great. I really appreciate it. Streaming video and OTT and SVOD and AVOD are all having exponential growth as a result of the pandemic and people staying home. Can you talk a little bit about these platforms and how they've impacted your advertising strategies, and how has your channel strategy changed with the introduction of everybody being home?
Yeah, look, I think it's a great question. I think our strategies they have evolved, big time in the past 12 months. I think that's probably the biggest impact from the past year that we've been through as a society, is that everything just got accelerated, right? So trends that we were starting to see that people were predicting that would take probably, I don't know, X years to become a reality, they just basically became a reality in 4 weeks, right? So we had to adapt our media strategy, our media plan, in everything to be able to accommodate and to be relevant in that new reality, right? So OTT, all those streaming video platforms, all of those, they became way more important than they were, in 2018, 2019. In 2020, they really evolved into becoming more important to us, right? So that's where people are. That's where they're spending time. So we want to make sure that we, not only are present in those platforms, but also we are present in a relevant way, right? So I think everything that we do here, we try to balance media and creative, right? So the message that we're talking matters a lot, not only where we are. So a lot of ideas make more sense in one channel than another, but independently, I think that the streaming video platforms they've been exploded for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Appreciate that. We'll talk a little bit about, consumer trends over the past year, right? Everybody's habits have changed. My habits have changed. Your habits have changed. What have you done to stay engaged with them besides social medias? Have you looked towards more app downloads? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, look, I think it changed. I think even if I take like probably 10 steps back, right? So if you look at the QSR industry, it's an industry that it's historically being built over impulse, right? So you have restaurants like QSR restaurants in every single corner of the country because people, at least in the past or before last year, the decision tree was much more an impulse decision than a planned decision. I think that's a massive change that happened with people staying more at home, right? So they started to plan more their visits to the restaurants. So we had to adjust the way and the moment that we talk to consumers, taking into account that now their decision tree has, of course, it hasn't changed upside down, but it has evolved. The mix between plan and impulse. Now we have more people that basically just shopped beforehand as an impulse visit, now planning their visits to the restaurant. So So we kind of like we adjusted the way we talk, how we talk, and when we talk to our guests. And the other pieces which also exploded in the past 12 months is delivery, right? So delivery was a channel again. It was trending, food delivery, right? So delivery as a whole it has been there for a little while, but food delivery was something that was starting to grow in mainstream chains. And now it's something that it's a reality. It's something that it's really there.
Yeah, the game's completely changed with mobile ordering and delivery. I'm super guilty of it. I love ordering from my couch, and I will continue to do so. If there's anything that COVID-19 gave to us, it's faster delivery across our mobile devices. So, in touching on that a little bit more with the mobile marketing and ordering, how do you prioritize that strategically on a regular basis?
I think it's let me see how we are basically since we see these channels to be the future of the industry, or at least we see ourselves in a moment of transition to where we were to where we're going to. So with that mindset, with that visibility, what we end up doing is over-investing in those channels. So if you look at our current size of the business in e-commerce or mobile order and payment and delivery versus how much we invest, we do over-invest in those channels. But again, more so than just investment, we also invest a lot of time from ourselves and our teams here and our agencies to really think about ways that we can, give our consumers, our guests, a better experience all together, right? So from just delivering the food to their doors, like what's the best way to do that? What's the best experience, the best packaging, the best type of product? So we're thinking about it in a holistic way, just so we can continue to drive a good experience to our guests. And of course, the experience starts from the moment you're browsing your app, and you see a call to action to Popeyes, or you see something, right? So that whole experience, we're looking from end to end to make sure that we continue to be relevant.
Definitely. That's great. And I want to touch on one more thing before we get into the fun stuff that you and I have spoken about pretty recently, but bringing that all together from the end-to-end solution, what is measurement from a measurement standpoint? What does that look like for Popeyes, and what's on the horizon? How are you tracking all of those mediums and making sure that you have your media in the best place overall?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jim. Look, I think it's again, the QSR industry, right? So if you look at the QSR industry, it's a pretty, it's a legacy industry, right? So it's something that, if you look before the advent, in quotes, of food delivery, the biggest innovation in the industry as a whole was drive-through, right? So that was the last, big innovation. So when we think about the QSR industry, we're really kind of like in a transformation mode here to basically jump into the next, big innovation for the overall industry, And then when you think about that, the measurement, like the media measurements that we put in place, is how do we basically build or leverage all the attribution models that we have in digital channels into other channels, so basically into users or guests that are going to our restaurants, right? So how do we tie and build, as you said, like an ecosystem that it's completely like we can attribute the whole system. Today we can attribute a portion of the system. I think the way things are going, in my opinion, the trend of how people are consuming content, consuming media, I think a lot of the consumer behavior will help to accelerate and get us to a place that we can measure the entire journey end to end, not only a portion that we can attribute 100% of the transactions, the journeys, and the experience.
Definitely. A lot of fun stuff ahead, and it's going to be an interesting journey. Excited to see how that plays out. One of the things that you and I discussed, and essentially the future of media, right, and how we're looking at that consumer and how they're ordering and what they're doing. We talked a little bit about the predictive menu board. Would love to hear, what Popeyes is working on from that perspective, how that came about, and what's your grand scheme for this all and goal of how to, leverage this for consumers. And, you and I were joking that I get super excited about this. It's pretty cool stuff. So excited to hear more about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I think it's as you said, our master plan to to get it there, right? So I think this whole initiative, it's pretty cool actually. Like it has like we're envisioning like two waves or two steps of that journey, right? So the first one is it's a more basic predictive selling, which is basically looking at past behaviors, and patterns, and translate or group them into different cohorts and be able to predict, like for instance, if you stop by a Popeyes and you order a chicken sandwich, I know by patterns that you're most likely to order a chicken tenders next, or if you order a chicken tenders, you're most likely to order an apple pie, or like we can understand the behaviors and by different cohorts and be able to give you. So in the end of the day, what's going to happen, what's going to give guests is a better experience, right? Because you're not going to be like sitting there, well, what do I want, like we're going to serve and offer you the products that you are most likely to like. The second stage is a more customized experience, right? So it's when you get to the restaurant, I know, hey Jim, I know it's you, these are your past orders, this is what you like, this is new that we thought you might like, that's the whole which is more of a, it's a customized experience, not so much based on cohorts and patterns that we see currently. But there are two different stages of this process. It's super exciting because it's it helps in the overall experience, right? So the experience of you going through the drive-through, but also for our restaurants, it's a great incentive for restaurants to operate in a much more efficient way because things just flow much better.
Definitely. With that predictive menu board, and you mentioned going through drive-through, and while certain locations may not have drive-through and some do, how do you see that as the future of you building out your new restaurants, right? Are you looking to drive that more predictive menu board for just a mobile app and pickup and delivery, or how do you kind of see that in the next couple of years?
Look, I think our current system at Popeyes, it's pretty well positioned from a drive-through perspective. So we do have the majority of the restaurants, they do have drive-through because again, it's putting the guests and the consumers first, right? So that's how people enjoy Popeyes. The majority of the consumers are currently taking Popeyes home to eat with their families. So drive-through makes a ton of sense for us to have. So in the drive-through, we want to have that across the whole country, right? So we want to have that capability of intelligence, of being able to predict the different offers to the whole country. And as we look forward in the future in terms of restaurant formats, we're thinking about different, 4 or 5 different formats that will be, built and tailored to different locations, different demographics, and different, places in the country or areas in the country that we place those stores. More urban areas, less urban, more, it really varies. So we're trying to create a more, flexible approach to the brand.
Definitely. With leaning in there and being flexible, how much do you lean on the data and analytics portion, and the innovative technologies to help you guys make these decisions?
Oh, 100%, 100%. Look, we have a whole business analytics team that it's constantly looking at every single movement in sales. We get, twice a day formal reports of sales, of how sales are going, the transactions, how many guests are coming to the restaurant. So we lean very heavily on data because it's a pretty solid kind of like sizable operation, right? So Popeyes currently has more than 2,500 restaurants in the country. So we do like data. It's probably one of our best tools to be able to make informed decisions and get to the best results.
Very cool. It's got to be exciting for live advertising and business analytics, all on the same day. You guys are staying busy down there, so
Exactly.
I love seeing it. Bruno, I really appreciate it. We got a couple of questions coming in, so would you like to take some questions?
Yes, let's do this.
All right, awesome. So I'll ask you the first one. So what is the role of the store? What is the role of retail media, and how are they shifting dollars?
role of the retail merchandising.
Yeah, I believe they might have had a typo, but what is the role of the store? What is the role of the retail media and how they are shifting dollars? So I think that might have been from the last one that got caught on ours. So I think this is for us. So how are you determining success and how is your organization set up to use that information to impact future initiatives is one of the other ones.
Yeah, can you repeat that question, Jim? Sorry, you cut off.
Yeah, sure. How are you determining success and how is your organization set up to use that information to impact future initiatives?
Oh, yeah. So we determine success by two, if I look, I'm oversimplifying here, but bear with me for a second. We look at two different metrics, right? So the first one is sales. It's really how number of guests coming to the restaurant. And when I say number of guests, I mean number of transactions, right? So if it's one transaction per day or 20 or 30 or whatever is the number, we look at those transactions just so we understand, is there a pattern that it's there that can inform anything. We look a lot at in that bucket of sales. We look a lot of external factors, like for instance, the price of gasoline. Sometimes informs the amount of people or the frequency that people are actually leaving their houses. So a lot of things play into us being able to read the market. And the second piece is the brand, right? So it's building the brand for the long term, right? So we have those. If I was to again oversimplifying, the two metrics that we look at is how our sales are performing in the short term. And the second one is how we're building the brand for the long term, right? So building brand equity, building brand love, building preference, building top of mind. So we're kind of like constantly, balancing those two objectives, so we don't, stay 100% in one bucket or 100% in another bucket, because it's not going to be very productive for us.
Definitely continue to innovate and stick and move. That's great. So we have another one here. What do you see as the biggest future challenge for e-commerce, and what's the biggest opportunity for Popeyes?
I think the biggest challenge, I guess, for food e-commerce is making sure that you have the same food experience that you would have in the restaurant, right? So I'm not going to name or list the different products because they will be all my personal opinion, but there are some products that you eat at home and is delivery, and you don't have the same experience as you have in the restaurant, right? So I think the main challenge here is how do we, again, thinking about the overall end-to-end experience, is how we offer our guests the best experience they can possibly have in terms of the food they have, the type of packaging they receive, how it's packed, the whole experience. I think it's a big challenge that we need to think about, and we need to continue to evolve. And when I say we, I mean the food industry in delivery. And the opportunity, I think it's to reach more households, right? So people will end up staying more at home, right? So we see a lot of companies already issuing, agile working policies. We see that, at least all the experts are saying that we're going to see that shift happening or continue to happen in the next year. So this channel really allows us to, maybe even come out of this situation in a better position, because previously you had to drive to the store. Now you don't have to drive to the store. So, maybe the 1-2 mile radius that you had to drive, now you don't need to drive anymore, and we can actually reach people into the 6 miles radius, so it's a big opportunity for us to get more people to enjoy Popeyes.
Definitely. I think there's a ton of opportunity for the restaurant industry overall, and especially with so many of you innovating within the space right now. I think it's going to be a really exciting time to see what comes out of this overall. And I think this question actually, alludes to it pretty good, is how do you see the future of in-person experiences at physical locations, right? Because there's so many different things happening. So that was a question from one of our attendees here. Yeah,
that's a great question, actually. I think it's again, if I was to try to simplify, I think the guests will be looking, or everyone will be looking for like more frictionless, less experiences, right? So trying to remove any friction you can have in that experience, either by ordering ahead and just basically grabbing your food through the locker and just not even having to go inside the store, or maybe if you had to go inside the restaurant, you just go for a quick second, pick up your food, the food is ready to go. So I think I think that's probably what we are going to see in the future. Especially for QSR, maybe those type of nuances will pop up as we move forward. How do we take those frictions out of that of the experience?
That's cool. You got a lot of questions coming in, Bruno, which is pretty crazy. It's a lot of good ones too. So we'll take a few more here. One of the ones is around customer moments, which we just touched upon. You mentioned aligning with customer moments. The QSR space is quite crowded. How are you thinking about media beyond TV, such as music and streaming, audio, specific video moments, as well as content initiatives?
Yeah, look, I think we are. That's the big, I guess, challenge that we have as marketers in this moment, right? So it's how do we really break the mold from the past, and challenge ourselves to do new things, to take new avenues. I think the QSR industry has been very, very heavily a TV industry, like a linear TV, a live sports TV type of industry. I think with evolved perception of how people are consuming content and everything else, we are constantly looking at different ways to bring our content to our guests, but also create content that it's native to those channels. I think there's always the endless debate, I guess, between the content and the media, right? So I think it's something that we need to make sure that we create the right content to the right channel, so we can really be relevant. Because otherwise, we're gonna end up, the classic, put your TVC on digital. Like it's not, it's not the best practice, So we need to create a digital content to be in the digital space. So that's what we need to be challenging ourselves. If you ask me currently, I don't think we as Popeyes, I think we can do much more. I think we can do much more to tap into new channels. This is a big topic of conversation here internally. So thanks for bringing that up in the question, because it certainly reminded me to go back and regain that conversation with the team.
That's great. And just from an overarching perspective, you guys just encompass, New Orleans so well and try to get that good feeling all the time. So bringing that to, all of that type of content will just, I think, be exponential for you guys over the next couple of years. But I think we got time for maybe a couple more here. I think this is a good one, just as we, talked about the past year and moving forward, is what have you learned from the crisis that can help your company navigate something like this in the future? Hopefully not, if need be.
I think the main look, I think the crisis or the pandemic, it brought us like two different moments, right? So I think at the beginning was panic, right? So what do we do? Like, because it was completely new circumstance and new, dynamic. Then afterwards, as we look back, I think that's what I was saying at the beginning, is like the pandemic actually accelerated a bunch of trends that we were starting to see, So I think the main learning to me is never settle to where you are, where we are as a brand. I think don't never get too comfortable. I think that's it's more of a mindset than anything else, and continue to push the boundaries. Like I think from a business perspective, that's an important one. And the other piece, which I think it's also I think it's more of a social movement that happened of people, going back to the basics. We were basically like, from the first, I can remember now actually, in the first 1 or 2 weeks of the pandemic, when it hit last year, actually, I think it's a year now today, actually, like today or 2 days ago, we one of the main things that we just realized is like guys, like people don't know if the restaurants are open or not. Like we need to go back to the most basic things of saying the restaurants are open. Like I think that's just to exaggerate and tell the message that going back to the basics and understanding that moment of relationship with the guests and how people are feeling about the circumstances of what's happening in society. It's more important than ever. I think we need to be mindful of that.
That's great. Speaking on that and going back to just strictly the basics and just letting people know if the restaurants were open or not, how much of a decision is it, within your tech stack to say, let's move that towards in-app and get that out there, just letting people know, as opposed to doing this big brand awareness campaign across other channels? How much of a focus is that to put that in-app now?
I think that the open message, I think it's people are more comfortable now. Right. So at that moment, we basically just, we wanted to react so fast that we basically just leveraged. It was more of a switching content than trying to replan the media that we had. So we basically we chose to act the fastest we could, and that would be, just switch the content, to include more basic messages and more basically, informational messages, right? So then creative messages, so that's that's the shift that we chose to make at that time, so we could react fast or faster. Now I think moving forward, like I think in-app and mobile and OTT and all these channels, they, as I mentioned before, they became very, very important to our plans, and we're now really happy to see the results, actually.
Great. We got some more questions here. So this is, more centered around data, and some of the things that we've been touching upon is, what are some exciting new sources of data that you are aware that might help Popeyes identify how high value audiences?
Look, I think it's we've been partnering with a bunch of vendors. I think some are more some pretty new concepts and vendors, but I think the ones that we've been really working closely together is to understand, people's behavior, like as per, we can get that information from credit card, we can get that information from base location, we can get that information from there are companies that basically have a big database of people loading their receipts, so we know exactly what people bought, so in the database, so we can understand source of volume. We have a new tool that we're exploring to understand, Google reviews, what's popping up in different regions, different places. How do we respond to those guests? How do we interact that feedback into our restaurant operations, into our marketing, into how we talk to people, other than the traditional ways of collecting data? But I think it's pretty amazing to see how many data points actually we are collecting currently. I think which actually one of the main initiatives that we have in the company as a whole for all our brands is basically creating a whole data strategy that we can feed all different data points and create something more meaningful and useful, because I think that's at least in my opinion, that's the risk of having too much data points, is that you don't know what to do with that. Like,
yep.
So we don't want to run that risk.
Can you never have too much data? And speaking with that, and looking at the personalization standpoint, how do you use that to inform not only your TV strategy, but your CTV strategy and beyond, including digital strategy? How much is the personalization factor? And like you just mentioned, there's so much data. How do you start to narrow that down and really pinpoint what is the most valuable? What does that process look like?
Yeah, look, I think, and to be completely open here, Jim, like we're not there 100%, like we're all learning this, right? So I think we're in the process of learning. I think the approach that we take with our media agencies and our teams here is the classic kind of like trying to segment, try to create cohorts, and try to understand different patterns of behavior that we can leverage and find some insights that can really be relevant to grant a specific execution for that channel or that audience. I think that's how we've been tackling this. But again, it's early stages. I think we have a bunch of work to be done and to improve this. But I think that's how we've been doing.
Very cool. We got a couple other questions here. So one is from one of our attendees. Do you expect your business to benefit less from the impulsive nature of QSR purchase, or do you see that returning? So more of a planned out scope as opposed to just being impulsive buying?
I think it's I think the impulse nature will get back. I think not to the levels that we saw before. I don't think we're going to go back to that levels, pre-pandemic. But I think they will come back, because it's just the nature, right? So people will be more out there, and they will be, you can possibly, at least I can myself, plan every single meal and every single step I take. So we try to plan it out at our best abilities. But you're always going to be in that situation that you just need to grab a quick bite, on the way to point A or B. So I think that's going to come back for sure. I don't think it's gonna disappear. And we need to be prepared. I think this phase of this past 12 months, they've been very in my opinion, they've been very rich in building those connections with guests, right? So I think all that brand connection and relevance that we created with guests, I think they will last long. I think they will last long, and they will probably inform, if you stop on restaurant here, or if you wait 2 blocks to stop in the restaurant, that you have a higher affinity.
Yeah, definitely. I think we all miss that organic foot traffic and just being able to to have that decision tree or whether we are going to eat out or go back to the office and eat. So someday we'll be back there. We got a couple more questions for you. So one of the things, what principles have your teams learned about authentic communication during this time, and how have you adjusted the messaging and tone? And does it vary by channel?
It does vary by channel very much. I think, as we learned, and I think even, I don't remember now when, but we saw those memes that were saying how people talk on LinkedIn, on different channels. I think it does change by channel for sure. Like, I think it's like a really the tone of voice and the approach, and the environment is completely different, right? By channel. I think that the past year just made us, I think the whole industry, just realize that there were a lot of very important topics that people were not considering talking about, defending, having a point of view. And I think the whole industry now is more aware of those topics, and really not only aware, but it's caring and taking care of those things, which I think it's what's been informing our conversations here. Making sure that we don't just do advertising for the sake of advertising, that we do advertising with purpose, with a good intention, and we don't do anything wrong in the execution. So that's how we evolved our thinking, and I think we're gonna continue to learn and continue to evolve. I think we see our brands as live human beings, right? So you don't have your personality for your whole life, right? So you evolve, you change, you mature. That's how the brand does as well. So that's what we're going to continue to do.
Yep. Well, you have a few different sandwiches out there now. What is the next big sandwich? We have you have the spicy chicken, you have the Cajun flounder. What are you guys cooking up right now?
Well, so we have a lot of cool stuff coming up. I cannot disclose any of them for you right now, but our culinary team, it's a pretty robust and best in class culinary team, to be honest. Those guys, they rock. Like, they create some products that sometimes we go to the test kitchen and we're like, oh my God, like, what is this? Like, we can't stop eating those things. So, but so we've been working very, very hard to bring more exciting news to the country.
That's good. Got to be a great perk of the job being in that test kitchen. We're all super jealous. We're all super jealous of that.
It's not bad. I cannot complain, to be honest.
Yeah, and just in wrapping up here and looking at that and working in the test kitchen, how does that feed into your your limited time offers and your seasonality of different food and sandwiches? Does that come into consideration when you're building out new sandwiches?
Yeah, it does. I think we do a lot of we have a whole category team, which is basically looking at different platforms and the future of them according to consumer behavior, according to market size, according to a lot of things. So we identify which products we feel like are part of our core offering, and which products are part of, like, peppering some different, excitement, fun stuff that will go in and out to the menu, just to bring more excitement to our guests. But yeah, so we factor those two things. So we're always constantly looking at new permanent offerings, and also LTOs that can complement our menu.
Awesome. Well, hopefully the test kitchens are sending some to your house while you guys can't be in the office right now. So I know I'm hungry. I'm assuming everybody else is, but I see Izzy's joining us again. Bruno, I just wanted to say a big thanks. I really appreciate your time. It's always great speaking with you, and really looking forward to seeing what's next for Popeyes overall.
Appreciate it, Jim. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Izzy, and the whole Brand Innovators team to inviting me. And it's a pleasure. It's great talking to you.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you both, Jim and Bruno. The customer experience is so key. So it's interesting to hear about how Popeyes goes about making it special for each one, and what the future holds for